Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our 2 p.m. agenda this March 17th of the House Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee meeting. Thank you to those joining us in person and also to those joining online. Just a few housekeeping items to help facilitate today's proceedings. If you are joining us online, if you can ensure that your name profile matches what you submitted your testimony under, that will help our technicians highlight you better. If you can keep yourself muted until you're called upon, that would also be helpful in facilitating the proceedings. If you are in person, as now we're doing a hybrid and people are here in person, we do have a wonderful podium that when you're called upon, you can approach and testify from, which is a little bit different than pre-pandemic where we didn't have podiums. With that, also want to mention that we do have a 2-minute time limit, so we'll gently ask folks to start to summarize at 2 minutes. And if you can start to summarize your testimony, that would be helpful. That'll just help us to ensure that we're able to get through the many bills that now seem to come through CPC. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. On our first measure, SB 448 relating to public safety, and this would repeal an act that prohibited the counties from adopting codes and regulations that would require the installation or retrofitting of residential fire sprinklers in 1- and 2-family dwellings and other types of structures. First off, we have the State Fire Council in support.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and members of the committee. Gary Lum, testifying on behalf of the State Fire Council.
Please go ahead.
Can
Gary.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill and would like to add that this should really be a home rule issue for the counties. All the counties throughout Hawaii have different needs and challenges regarding water supply, fire hydrant distances between fire stations, and for the state to dictate a one-size-fits-all solution or non-solution is counterproductive to fire safety. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Gary. We also have the Maui Fire Department in support. Not here. The Honolulu Fire Department in support. Also not here. The Hawaii Council for Association of Apartment Owners in opposition, and not here. We have on-time testimony individually from Steve Bunting in support. Also not here. We'll move to our late testimony. First off, we have BIA Hawaii in opposition. Welcome, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Stephanie Sakamoto on behalf of BIA Hawaii. We're in opposition. I just want to note for the record that we are not anti-sprinkler. We are pro-consumer choice. And our main concern is the current price of housing in Hawaii. The current median price of a new home on Oahu is $1,060,000. And adding mandatory costs of fire sprinklers would raise this price further. Available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. We also have the General Contractors Association of Hawaii in opposition, and not here. Coastal Construction in opposition, also not here. Reflections Glass in opposition, not here. NIOP Hawaii in opposition.
Hello, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. Evan Oy on behalf of NIOP Hawaii, testifying in opposition to SB 448. NIOP is concerned that repealing HRS section 46-19.8 will allow the counties to mandate installation of residential fire sprinkler systems that cost a significant amount of money and will raise the cost of affordable housing. The increased costs associated with the installation of these sprinkler systems in all new 1- and 2-family dwellings will increase the cost of housing units or prevent housing projects from penciling out altogether. For these reasons, we respectfully ask this measure to be deferred. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. We'll be available for any question.
Thank you very much, Evan. We also have Graham Builders in opposition, not here. Montage Decor LLC in opposition. Also have late testimony from the Hawaii Realtors in opposition. Late individual testimony from Natalie Iwasa in opposition. Anthony Borges in opposition, and Greg Thielen in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 448? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Representative Onishi.
Chair, yeah, for the State Fire Council. Yeah, Mr. Long.
Yes, State Fire Council.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the State Fire Council's adoption of the fire code requires new homes to have a sprinkler system. Is that correct?
That is correct. The National Model Fire Code and the building codes all require the installation of automatic fire sprinkler systems in new construction for 1 and 2 family dwellings.
Do you guys have any idea as to what average cost would be per square foot of home?
Well, when we talked to a few plumbing and sprinkler contractors about 6 months ago, for a typical 1,800 to 2,000 square foot home, that's on a normal typical lot, they estimated between $10,000 and $15,000. And we did actually talk to a few contractors that did complete jobs in that price range. Occasionally, you're going to see testimony from contractors that say, "Oh, we did a job, it cost $30,000." And I submit to you, those are special cases where the lot is perhaps a flag lot. It's far away from the water main on the street. Therefore, the increased cost compared to our estimates.
Wouldn't that water line expense be part of the water for the home itself?
Well, in the typical modern residential fire sprinkler system for a new 1 and 2 family dwelling we're speaking of can be integrated with a domestic water supply, therefore would not need any additional cost or additional water supply for that system. It's integrated with your domestic water supply, so it's just, the sprinkler heads are just another appliance off of your plumbing system.
Okay, so I'm confused in regards to if the State Fire Council determined that new constructed residents are required to have fire sprinkler system. Why can't the State Fire Council come up with a statewide determination for existing residential and apartment requirements versus leaving it up to each county?
I'm sorry, I'm kind of confused on your question. You first referred to new construction, then you said existing.
No, if the State Fire Council mandated that new construction requires a sprinkler system, why is the Fire Council now deferring to the counties to implement their own sprinkler requirements when the State Fire Council could require sprinkler systems for existing single-family or residential units?
Well, the state normally adopts the national model fire code with a few exceptions, but the state has no building department entity to review individual building plans that come in for residential construction in any of the counties.
Well, I realize that, but you also don't have anybody to review new home construction plans. And you depend on the county,
Correct.
so why
Correct.
not
That's-
just make it a statewide policy instead of deferring to the counties, who could have different requirements at each county versus us having a standard Hawaii requirement. You've done it for new construction. Why can't you do it for existing residential units?
Are you referring to existing residential, like a retrofit? Sorry, you just mentioned existing construction.
Well, okay, so am I misunderstanding this? You have a state fire code for the national code, which you adopted, which
Correct.
requires sprinkler systems in new constructed residents. What are you deferring to the counties?
We're requesting that the prohibition be repealed and allow the counties to determine whether they want to adopt that requirement in the building code for new construction.
So if the state fire council has a requirement in the state code, the counties can opt out of it? Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. They can choose to amend it or not.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Onishi. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. SB 2185, this is relating to fireworks. This requires the auditor of fireworks and articles pyrotechnic records for each county fire department to submit an annual report to the legislature detailing inventory, record keeping, and sales of fireworks to licensed or permit holders. It makes a grant and aid to the counties to cover costs associated with the reporting information to the legislature. On SB 2185, we have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments, but not here. State Fire Council in support.
Hi, Gary Lim from the State Fire Council. Again, we stand on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Gary. We also have the Maui Fire Department in support, not here. Honolulu Fire Department in support, also not here. We have on-time individual testimony from Lois Crozier in support. Samuel Mitchell in support. Samuel Mitchell is also not here. Beverly Heiser in support. Reen Andrade in support. And we have late individual testimony from Karen Clem in support. And Gerard Silva in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2185? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on SB 2185? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next fireworks related item. This is SB 2123, also relating to fireworks, and this increases the maximum fine that may be assessed per fireworks related violation from $2,000 to $5,000, provided that the fireworks violation does not otherwise have a specific penalty enumerated in statute. On SB 2923, we have the State Fire Council in support.
Hi, Gary Lim from the State Fire Council, again, standing on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you. And members, I'll ask your indulgence just out of an abundance of caution. I will read everybody in case they magically appear, since we're in a hybrid virtually. I don't want to inadvertently disenfranchise anyone. Maui Fire Department in support. Honolulu Fire Department in support. Animal Rights Hawaii in support. Individual testimony and support from Lois Crozier, Lynn Matuso, Samuel Mitchell, Beverly Heiser, all in support. Then we have late testimony also from individuals including Maureen Andrade in support, Gerard Silva in opposition, and Corey Chun in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2923? Okay, seeing no further testifiers in SB 2923, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 3194, also relating to the enforcement of, or this is relating to the enforcement of laws. It's a creative way of tackling fireworks. It's an amalgam of some of the measures we've seen, plus some new ones as it pertains to fireworks. It establishes an expeditious adjudication system for the processing of fireworks infractions. It increases the fine for certain fireworks violations and clarifies what constitutes a separate violation. It increases the penalty for removing or extracting pyrotechnic contents. It authorizes the sheriffs to enforce fireworks control law, and it requires the Attorney General to establish an explosion detection technology working group, as well as requiring Department of Public Safety to develop and implement a web-based reporting tool for illegal fireworks. On SB 3194, we have the Hawaii State Fire Council in support.
Gary Lum, again with the State Fire Council, standing on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. We have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. We have the Judiciary offering comments. We have the Maui Fire Department in support. Honolulu Fire Department in support. Honolulu Police Department in opposition. Oh, I guess they're not here. Okay, they're not here. We also have the Hawaiian Humane Society in support. Not here. An individual on-time testimony from Lois Crozier in support. Samuel Mitchell, support. Beverly Heiser. We have late testimony from the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, Sitting County of Honolulu in support. Hi, Tricia. Oh, Tricia, I think you're muted. While we wait for Tricia, I'll come back to her. Maybe she's having a technical issue. We also have late testimony from Maureen Andrade in support. Gerard Silva in opposition. And then we will go back to Tricia Nakamatsu.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank
I'm
you.
so sorry. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Department. We are in support of this bill, and our testimony focuses primarily on the change to make some of the offenses, fireworks-related offenses, an infraction, and to create a system, an adjudication system to handle those types of infractions. I'm sorry it wasn't emphasized more in our testimony, but if you look to the bottom of page 1 and top of page 2 from our testimony, we do have a suggestion that you may want to consider certain offenses that are currently based on weight. The severity of the offense varies based on weight. Currently, it's a misdemeanor or a C felony. We'd suggest if you wanted to carve out the lightest weight class of section, did we say it was HRS 132D14 subsection A2, which we believe covers the primary behavior that would be relevant for an infraction if you wanted to do lighter weights, perhaps under 5 pounds or whatever weight you feel appropriate. Purchasing, possessing, setting off, igniting or discharging aerial devices, and all the other things in that section seem to be what we believe the legislature is getting at with the infraction approach. We do note that selling aerials, display fireworks, or articles pyrotechnic may be more than simply an infraction level offense, but well, of course, that is up to the committee and the legislature to decide policy-wise. We're available for questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tricia. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3194? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our last agenda item. SB 3082 relating to mortgage rescue fraud, and this amends the definitions of a distressed property consultant and mortgage assistance relief service in section 480E2 Hawaii Revised Statutes. Members, please note this administration bill, we also heard and passed out a similar version of this previously. On SB 3082, we have the Office of Consumer Protection in support. Office of Consumer Protection, DCCA.
Oh, yes, thank you. James Evers appearing on behalf of the DCCA. I'm an enforcement attorney with the Office of Consumer Protection. As it's apparent from our written testimony, we're in support of SB 3082. The best way to deter people from engaging in mortgage rescue fraud is to give people notice of the rules in effect that identify what is allowed and what is prohibited. And the problem that we've run into is an inconsistency between state law and federal law. When the state enacted Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 480E, the state created essentially 8 categories of exemptions to the definition of distressed property consultant. When 2 years later, when the federal government passed its own legislation in this area, the federal government only recognized 3 exemptions. And ever since then, there's been somewhat a level of confusion. And this is our opportunity to get away with that. The bill is aimed at cleaning up the discrepancy between the 2 laws. The best way to give notice is to have a clear state statute. What the bill proposes is that we maintain the 3 exemptions recognized under federal law and doing away with the remaining exemptions. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon.
Thank you very much, James. We also have Mihoko Ito with the Hawaii Realtors in opposition. In person, thank you for waiting through all the other bills.
No problem. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Nice to see you all in person. Mihoko Ito here on behalf of the Hawaii Association of Realtors. We are in opposition to this bill, and I will just briefly summarize why. In addition to the provisions of the Mortgage Assistant Relief Services rule that was enacted by the feds in 2010, in 2011, the Federal Trade Commission actually clarified that it would not enforce this rule against realtors and real estate professionals except for misrepresentation cases. So we would submit that the exemption should be restored for real estate licensees because otherwise the state and federal laws would be inconsistent. And I would also just note that real estate professionals do perform a lot of services that overlap with distressed property consultants, including giving advice, and negotiating with lenders on behalf of distressed homeowners. So for those reasons, we would submit that if the committee is inclined to move forward, we would ask for that exemption for real estate licensees be restored at page 3, lines 16 through 20. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mihoko. We also have the Maui Fire, or excuse me, we have the Hawaii Bankers Association in opposition. Are not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3082? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll recess for decision making. Any questions? We'll recess for decision making. Recess. PM agenda of the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee meeting for decision-making. Thanks to those who have joined us in person and those who have joined us online as well. First off, on SB 448 relating to public safety, we had some good discussion here, and I wanted to have this discussion considering we haven't talked a whole lot about sprinklers in CPC. But I think for some of the concerns raised and noting the significant amount of opposition as the legislature grapples with how to tackle the affordable housing crisis, I think for now, the recommendation is going to be to defer this measure and to continue having discussions about it, but perhaps coming up with something that may be a little bit more ripe and ready to cross the finish line in the future. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation to defer? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go on to SB 2185 relating to fireworks. The recommendation here is going to be to pass with just one simple amendment. In the purpose section of the bill, I'd like to clarify, just because there was some concern by the State Fire Council, that the GIA is in addition to as opposed to replacing any funds. It's already got a defective date. I think that's just the recommended amendment to ensure that the House has made some change to this bill. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation?
Yes,
Representative
Chair.
Onishi.
Yeah, on this bill, I really don't understand what is the purpose of the report and what is the state going to be doing with this report in regards to fireworks violation or, you know, well, I really don't see what the purpose of the report is for the legislature. And secondly, the person who's in charge of collecting the records is already established in state state law, and they already collect all this information. So I don't know why we would need to provide funding to the counties for something that they're already doing and just requesting that this record information be provided to the legislature. So with that being said, Chair, sadly, I have to vote against this bill, so I'll be voting no.
Okay, thank you for your comments. They are duly noted, Representative Onishi. Members, any additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2185 SD3 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino.
Aye.
Representative Har.
Aye.
Representative Hashem.
Aye.
Representative Kong is excused. Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
No?
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2123 relating to fireworks. The recommendation here is going to be to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050 to ensure that this has to go to conference, as well as making various technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2923 with amendment, noting the excused absence of Representative Kong will be noted excused for the rest of this agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next, members, on SB 3194. The recommendation here is to pass with amendments, including on page 7, lines 8 through 10, cleaning up some of the language here to make it clearer that the $500 fine is for the first violation and $2,000 for each subsequent violation. Some of the drafters felt that that could have been a little bit clearer. I'll also think. One second. And just so that we continue the discussion, I would also like to adopt the judiciary's amendment, which they suggest would help them better effectuate this expeditious adjudication system if we were to indeed impose it. So with those amendments, members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay. Seeing none, then Vice Chair Provost.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3194 SD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, members, SB 3082 relating to mortgage rescue fraud. On this, I would like to restore the exclusion of the real estate brokers and salespeople on page 3, line 16 through 20. I would also like to note in the committee report, I think is brought up by our esteemed colleague, Representative Har, that not enforcing is not necessarily equivalent to it's legally permissible, just so that in reality, I think we would make this comport with what is the practice, but I think that's a good thing to note in the committee report, as well as inserting a effective date of January 1, 2050 to ensure that the bill has to come back to conference. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3082 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, members. This meeting is adjourned.